Welcome back to Slashback Cinema, the podcast where we rewind the VHS, pop in a fresh tape, and summon the demons of 80s horror, one blood-soaked gem at a time. I'm Shanny.
And I'm Ryan. Tonight we're stepping into a full-blown demon showdown, pitting the 1988 cult classic Night of the Demons against its 2009 remake in a battle for demon supremacy.
We're going head-to-head, or should I say dead-to-dead. It's practical effects versus CGI, Gen X versus millennials. Does the original schlock staple still hold up, or does the remake show us how it should have been done?
So grab your black eyeliner and your favorite sacrificial snack and maybe a crucifix, just in case. This is Slashback Cinema. Let's get possessed.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
Before we jump in, we have a quick request. If you're enjoying Slashback Cinema, please consider sharing the show with your friends.
Word of mouth is the best way for new people to find the show.
If you're digging the deep cuts, the creepy trivia, and the retro horror vibes we serve up each Tuesday, consider giving us a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. Your ratings help new listeners find the show. And now let's get to it. Ryan, who recommended this movie in the first place? I need to have words with that person.
Dude, I think this was you.
Did a listener suggest this, or was this our idea?
I think when we were plotting out June here, you put this one on the calendar, and yeah, there's only one place to point that finger, buddy.
I need to have words with myself that, last week when we talked about Jacob's Ladder, you said while you were watching the movie that you thought to yourself, this is the reason we do this podcast. And while I was watching Night of the Demons from 1988, I was thinking, why the hell are we doing this podcast? The first 5 minutes of the 1988 movie are full of the most annoying people I've ever seen in my entire life.
Boo! I wish I had a camera. You look like you dropped the load, Junior.
All right, we shouldn't even get into it yet. We have to. Do you want to try to summarize both of these movies?
Man, there's this girl, Angela, who decides to throw this party and invite a group of friends to, in both movies, this creepy old haunted mansion. And one appears to be more of a funeral home, although both of them seem to have some funeral home aspect. The friends show up, and then Angela gets possessed first. She winds up passing on the demonic possession to the rest of the teens gathered at this party. And one by one, they start killing off the different cast members. And they're trying to get out alive, but the house is not letting them out. So that's basically the story, although there's some layers added to the 2009 remake.
So had you heard of this movie at all before we watched the original one?
The original, that's one of those, we're going to talk about this in one episode, but I was about to say that's an iconic cover, VHS cover. And we talked about needing to create a slashback bingo card, because when I say iconic or eye candy or disturbing or unsettling, Jen's like, you keep saying those words over and over again. So I'm going to come up with this bingo card that listeners can just check off. Get that card complete, mail it in. I'll send you some stickers.
I think we just need a thesaurus.
Yeah, but no, really, the VHS cover, it is iconic. It stands out. I remember it. I always saw it and was like, "Ooh, I should check that out."
If Jen is listening, the cover is also legendary, celebrated, notable, and quintessential. How do we do?
Those are good. I'll run it by her and see if those are adequate substitutions. And I will just say that I thought it was a great idea to do these back to back. So it's fun to put these two together and have a Night of the Demon sandwich.
And so both movies have this Angela demon. Angela was played by Amelia Kincaid. And then is her name pronounced Linnea?
Linnea. Yeah, she was.
Do you recognize her?
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead.
Yes, we actually talked about her in some detail because she was the punk girl in Return of the Living Dead who inexplicably in the middle of the movie gets aroused by being in a graveyard and then takes off all of her clothes. And we talked about that scene being rather startling. This movie also, by the way, has a startling scene that I feel like we will have to discuss at some point. Everyone who watches this movie walks away talking about the same scene. So we'll definitely get there at some point. But Linnea Quigley, she's like a scream queen. She was like in a lot of these 80s cheesy, schlocky horror movies.
Yeah, the lead character is played by Kathy Podwell. Her name's Judy, and she's dressed up as Alice in Wonderland. But yeah, definitely interesting cast. I don't know that they were hired all on the strength of their acting abilities.
I've heard stories about this place ever since I was a kid. The Hall family met a pretty gruesome end, didn't they?
They sure did. As a matter of fact, it was on Halloween night. One of them went crazy and slaughtered the entire family, then committed suicide. They could never figure out who did it. Too much blood and guts.
I can't believe we're gonna party here.
When I watched the first 10 or 15 minutes of the 2009 one, I immediately thought it was a better movie. I thought the 2009 one, the acting was a little bit more polished, and even thought the directing was a little bit more sophisticated. It felt like this might be somebody who went to film school, who knows where to put a camera. It's a little bit more high end. What did you think when just at the very beginning? What was your impression of both these movies?
They start out a similar setup. It's Halloween night and it's a street scene with trick or treating, and right out of the gate you get a sense of kind of the period of time and when these films were made. And the 80s one, we talk about this a lot. There's certainly a feeling and vibe of those films, and that the low budget kind of feel
Yeah.
was really coming through in the original. And then I agree with you. It felt like they took the storyline and plot and polished it up more, and it felt like better paced and more engaging. But I also was wondering, like, is that just an effect of that's much more current filmmaking approach
Right.
in 2009? And that's what we were reacting to. But I
Yeah,
had the same
higher end
thought.
cameras and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. When people think of schlocky 80s horror movies, I feel like this is the schlockiest and the 80s-ish of them all. When you meet Linnea Quigley's character, she's like in a dress and she's leaning over and her butt is filling up the entire screen. And then you find out she's trying to distract these two store owners in a convenience store so that her friend Angela can shoplift a bunch of stuff. And the movie is just shameless in its kind of cheesy sexiness and getting two
Yes.
girls to kiss. And
Yeah.
oh my God.
Shameless is a good way to put it. There's some really racy stuff in it for 88, although
Yeah.
when we get to the new film, did a different take on some of those scenes that took it to a place that I was like, my God, like I don't know that I really needed to see that or the
Yes.
original. Like,
Yes.
damn.
Yeah, the 2009 one is the porniest horror movie we have seen yet.
God.
Did you watch either of these movies with anyone else in your
No,
house?
and a good thing I didn't. Like, man, geez, holy crap.
Yes, ditto.
Yeah, watchers and listeners beware.
What I thought was kind of fascinating about the original was there's actually a wider mix of people. There's like an Asian girl and there's like this black guy. Is it Raj? I think his name is.
Yeah.
Because it's a black guy and because it's an 80s horror movie, I was positive that he was going to immediately get killed off. But actually, spoiler alert, he's one of the two people that actually lives in the movie and survives. And I thought, well, props to this movie for actually like subverting our expectations a little bit. It seemed to like be aware of the genre.
Yeah, I had a similar thought. Yeah, that stood out. And then the remake is a pretty white cast across the board.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, the 2009 cast is actually more homogenous than the 88 cast. So I'd say that's point Gen X.
Wonder Twin Powers, activate!
There you go. Ding, ding, ding. I just made a bunch of notes. It was sort of like then versus now. And it was like the vibe check. 88, it's like this campy classic B horror movie. It's got the Halloween party energy. The 2009 remake, the vibe, it's definitely slicker, it's gorier, and kind of more over the top with some of those gratuitous scenes, but maybe a little less charm, overall.
The original movie, I actually thought had a lot more creepy vibe. The 2009 one, all of the scares are basically jump scares. Like the only time the movie can actually get an emotion out of you is when it gets real quiet and then somebody goes, ah! And then something jumps onto the screen. And I thought the 1988 one genuinely creeped me out. That was actually a creepy location. I don't know. Did you get any of that? Like, I definitely found myself like a little unnerved by by the location of the original movie.
The dust and cobwebs did not seem like they were props in the original. Yeah. It looked pretty run down old house that probably someone stepped through a floorboard and fell into the basement. It did make me think when we lived in Baltimore. Did I ever take you to those parties? It was in this really run down part of Baltimore, but I guess it used to be pretty high end, and it was
I remember
back in the 30s or 40s. But it was this place called the Mansion, and it was an old funeral home that a bunch of artists lived in, rented out rooms, and they would throw these ragers. And in the main room, it was the viewing room. They still had the casket there. And they would put the kegs of beer in there, and the band would play, and it was just like this movie. It was pretty funny.
Okay, Ryan, that is actually in my notes to ask you, did we go to a party where they filled a casket with beer, or did I have a dream about that? But
Nope,
you remember,
I took you to
it was
that
real.
party. Yeah. A couple of
It
those
was okay.
parties.
Yeah, and so I thought the original actually did like a pretty decent job of being creepy, but the cast was incredibly annoying. The first 10 minutes, I couldn't, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get through it. I mean, they were so irritating. The character, Sal Romero is
Sal.
his
Oh
last
yeah,
name.
terrible.
Super incredibly cheesy Italian, just collection of stereotypes as his whole personality.
I go tell that pretty little piece you call your sister that handsome hunk Sal's here. And tell her I brung my pet snake for her to play with.
And then Hal Havens is the actor that plays Stooge, and
Yeah, eat a bowl of fuck. I am here to party. Yeah.
when I've watched people talk about this movie online, it does seem like it's really best if you watch this at a certain age because it is so immature. It feels like such an immature, like practically preteen. If you're 12 years old and you watch this movie for the first time, I think the humor of this movie and the effects could actually like really work on you. And the stupid jokes might actually seem like genuinely funny or clever.
Yeah, and if you think about kind of the movies and the culture of the time, like it was like Porky's and Screwballs and
Right.
Animal House. A lot of that stuff you go back to, you're like, wow, that can't believe that was on the screen, or people thought that was funny. It felt like that was a piece of this film too. But you're right. If you saw it at 12 or 13, you'd probably be pretty into this movie.
Yeah, that's a really good catch. That this is like a Porky's audience, like a version of a horror movie, made super cheap and meant to be on VHS or shown at like a midnight showing or maybe in a drive-in theater. Like
Right.
those seem like the kind of place where a movie like this could really pop.
There were a lot of influences on this film, some of the Porky's shenanigans or whatever, but
Mhm.
also like Evil Dead. And then there's that one scene with the lipstick that I was like, clearly he saw a Cronenberg movie, Videodrome,
Yeah.
and was
Yes.
like, we need to put this scene in here. It felt like it wore its influences pretty directly.
Yes. All right. So you want to describe this sequence is the most famous in the movie.
Feel free to kind of outline this one because I watched it and I was like, WTF? Like, what the
Yeah.
hell's going on?
Yeah, the hero of the original Night of the Demons is the guy that did the special effects.
Steve Johnson.
That guy, he genuinely had some talent, and he was pretty young. This is another example. We talked about The Thing, where they hired a kind of unknown special effects wizard. Steve Johnson was also like a young guy in his 20s who really hustled and decided he was going to make this movie his calling card. And I have to say, some of the effects that he pulled off in '88 with worse cameras, lower budget, less quality materials outshone the 20-year later remake with their bigger CGI budget.
I agree. Yep.
And this is one of those sequences. So in the original 1988 sequence, and I would like to apologize to our audience for what I'm about to describe. Whatever you picture in your
do we need to describe it? Like I'm like, maybe we just tell people to go watch it. But
I feel like it is such an iconic scene. I don't know how you don't explain it to people, but let me try.
lay it out, and then we'll decide if we keep it. Yeah.
So Linnea Quigley's character, basically over the course of the movie, one by one, they all become a demon. And in the original '88 movie, basically all a demon has to do is kiss you, and then you get the demon energy. And it seems like in the 2009 one, they decide to take it further by basically you have to almost have full intercourse in order to have like the demon energy imparted onto you.
Or bite someone's tongue off. Those are your
Right.
options. Yeah.
Yes. So Linnea Quigley gets, I think she and Angela kiss. And so Linnea, the demon power goes into her. So now they're both demons. And Linnea has this scene where she has like painted quite a bit of her face in her lipstick. So she already looks like she's a clown, like crazy clown-like look. And then she seduces, I think it's the character Jay, and she takes off her top, and then she takes the lipstick tube that she's holding and she pushes it into her nipple where it disappears. And the effect is actually pretty impressive. Like Steve Johnson talked about the fact that he made this breast out of Jello. And you're right, it totally looks like a Videodrome kind of crazy effect of like reaching your hand inside your body. It actually like came off pretty good. I like just speaking on a sheer technical level. It's actually like a pretty cool looking effect, but when you're seeing it for the first time in the movie, it is a what the F moment. If you are not prepared for it, it is shockingly weird. And so I almost have to give props to the audacity of the people who made this movie to come up with such a crazy idea. We've watched what 30 horror movies now, and I was genuinely shocked when I saw this scene. I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know that that's what this movie was famous for, and it is just bizarre to see someone do this effect. And it's also inexplicable. It has nothing to do with the plot or anything else. It's just this random body horror moment.
Very weird. And then they fold it into the new one and they take it to a level which I don't even want to talk about it, but I'm just like, my God, like
I'll just say she makes it reappear out of a different part of her body. I was surprised how much the 2009 one was not as frightening. The demons were not as frightening looking. It's like the CGI is, they definitely have like taken it to another level of in terms of what they can do 20 years later, but it's not as scary as the makeup that they were using in 1988.
I totally agree with you. I will say that one thing I did appreciate about the 2009 movie, like in the original, they really hype up the fact that Angela is throwing this party. You're invited. She's going to have all these people there. The party happens, people start showing up, and there's like 7 people at this party. I was like, even Shawnee and I threw better parties than Angela did. But in the 2009 remake, you know, there's hundreds of people that
It's
show
a
up to this
rager.
full-on rager, and you're like, oh yeah, this is like what the party should have been. And then they basically get to the reduction of the people that are attending by the cops showing up, busting the party, and these kind of 7 stragglers remain in the house, which I feel like that was a much better way to set up the story and kind of what happened. So props to the remake on that one.
Okay, boomer, okay, boomer, okay, boomer, okay.
The heroes actually pretty quickly come upon like weapons that seem to do considerable damage to these demons, and they're just kicking the crap out of them for like the last half an hour of the movie. I almost started to feel bad for the demons. Like it's almost a horror movie where the demons are being attacked by 3 psychotic teenagers.
Plot twist. Well, we were talking about the kind of backstory added to the 2009, what worked and what didn't work. I thought it was a little interesting layer to the plot with Ed Furlong shows up in this one as Colin, the drug dealing boyfriend who is a bit down on his luck. And
yeah, Edward Furlong was from Terminator 2.
Anyway, he gets involved because he's going to show up to this party and sell some drugs. I'm pretty sure that Ed Furlong only agreed to do this film, his terms of the contract were, if I can just be smoking and perhaps drinking through the entire film. Like,
yes.
I don't know that there's a scene where he's not smoking cigarettes. He's kind of just slogging through this one. Although I have to say, I did enjoy him on screen. There's been some criticism that he's only given 20%, but I thought he was a nice little ad.
There was one sequence in the 2009 version that this has come up before, Ryan, where you and I, because we both own old homes that require a lot of work, a thing that we bring to this podcast that you'll get on no other horror podcast is our comments about the work that people do on these houses. So there's a scene in the 2009 version where the 3 surviving heroes run into a room. And what's supposed to happen is they peel off a layer of paint and then discover that behind that is another layer where 100 years ago, someone had written all of these hexes and voodoo-like charms and that keep this room safe from the demons. And that sequence, in order for the heroes to discover this, they have to peel the paint off of every wall in this room, which they do in a matter of seconds with their bare hands. And I thought, I've done that kind of work on a 100-year-old house. That is a full day effort.
Well, I think it was plaster. Like it was skimmed over old plaster, and they were like peeling off the pieces. But you're right.
But
like
you need tools for that.
They would have needed some scrapers, and you need a mask for that kind of thing. That's a lot of dust that you're producing, like that. You know, completely unbelievable. And which was more unbelievable, that part or then the demons soaking the room in blood to try to wash off the spells on the wall, and then they're redrawing the spells with charcoal. I don't know. There's some logic gaps in that whole scene.
I got to tell you, the most frightening part of the 2009 version is they were all getting poisoned by lead paint because they did not take seriously the OSHA requirements of how to remove the what is it called? Debasement? What is it called when you remove lead paint?
Abatement. Yeah, you got to get
the
right. Yeah.
Yeah. The abatement efforts were not respecting any kind of state or federal laws. And even I was looking at these 3 survivors thinking, well, if they survive this movie, they're all going to end up with lead paint poisoning in the hospital immediately. Yeah, call
Real
in.
in-depth knowledge.
You can either call in with horror movie suggestions or ask us questions about home ownership of a 100-year-old house or older, and we can give you some suggestions. We've talked about fixing toilets. We've talked about framing. We've talked about balconies on the second floor.
Johnny, just last week I was crawling into my crawl space under the kitchen to reattach my dryer vent pipe, and I came out covered in horrors. I tell you, like cobwebs, like you've never seen.
Right.
And the space is so small that when I go up into it, I have to have Jen come into the basement and then push me into the hole.
Oh my God.
Like by my feet, because I can't actually get into it. And then when I come back, I have to like do reverse. And then she has to grab my feet and pull me out of the hole.
Do you ever come across any creatures in there?
The first time I ever did it, there's a bunch of dead animal skeletons in there.
Oh,
critters
God.
that had died years ago.
That's more frightening than anything in this movie.
I think one thing after watching the original, right when the movie ended, I sort of had the thought to myself, I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to say about this movie. And I sat there and thought about it for a few minutes. I was thinking, well, I really did like the ending of the film because it kind of brings it around. It was like 360 closes it out with this old man you see at the beginning of the film who.
Oh, right. We didn't talk about that. Yeah, there's this bookend.
Yeah, he clearly bought apples to put razor blades in and like hand out the kids, and you can tell he's like this kind of like, I'm gonna get you kind of old guy.
Damn rotten kids. They'll get what they deserve. Night.
The opening and closing scene are not connected at all to the rest of the movie. And so it opens with an old angry man holding an apple on Halloween. And yeah, so anyone that knows lore of Halloween.
Yeah, the teenagers are fucking with this guy, so they're kind of knocking his stuff over, mooning him, whatever.
And then at the very end of the movie, they return to that guy, and it's like the next day.
He's sitting down to breakfast. He's all grumpy, and I think his wife comes down. And she's like, "Oh, good morning," and he's like, "What's good about it?" Or some, grumpy old man stuff. And he sits down. She brings him a slice of pie with his coffee, and he starts eating it, and then some sort of dialogue and exchange about like, oh, where'd you get the apples from? And she's like, oh, well, yeah, you brought them home last night. And then he gets this look on his face, and then the razor blades are in the apples and takes out the old man.
Yes, and then he starts bleeding out of his neck because that's how razor blades were. The new movie just kind of lacks like charm like the original had.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's funny watching the 2009 version made me appreciate the 80s version more. Like I actually thought the 80s version was actually people who were like trying to like make a movie. They were like putting their heart into it.
Yeah.
And the second half of the millennial movie that I'm calling it, the 2009 movie, it feels a little more phoned in. It feels a little more like this is not a passion project for these people.
No, yeah.
I think it's time to bring it in for Stabby scores. I don't remember who went first last time. How do you want to do this?
Well, I could just jump in. I feel like I went back and forth on comparing these two, and the pendulum swung in multiple directions right out of the gate. Watching the first one, like I said, I was sort of like sitting there scratching my head like, okay. And then going right into the remake, like I totally agree with you. The first half had momentum. It was like definitely filmed better, but there's a lot of stuff that we just talked about with just over the top and kind of tasteless. Didn't have the charm of the original in a lot of ways. So even though it was definitely felt paced like a more contemporary film and edger cut, I don't know that it added a few things, but not a lot to the original material. And exactly what you said, like watching the new one made me appreciate some of the things about the original. We watched that kind of behind the scenes making of thing, which, clearly people put a lot of work into this one. The acting honestly is horrible in the first one. Like it is just really bad. There were a lot of scenes that I was like, man, this plot feels aimless. It's just them running from room to room, and then demon flying down the hallway. Oh, they run to another room. Demon flying down. Like I was ready for the first one to wrap up. So, remake Night of the Demons.
So the 2009, you're gonna rate that one first?
Yep, 2 stabs.
Double rainbow. Oh my God.
2 stabs for 2009. All right. And then how about the original?
OG, 2.5 stabs.
It's starting to even look like a triple rainbow.
It edges out the remake by half a stab. So there you go.
That is exactly what I did too. So originally, and I had exactly the same thought you did. I was watching this movie thinking, the original 88 one, thinking it wasn't like really grabbing me. So I was going to give the new one 2 stabs, but I decided, you know what? I'm giving it an extra half a stab, the original 88 one, because Raj lives at the end. And so props to being a little more aware of the genre rules and bending them a little bit. That actually, like, I thought was surprising and a little fresh. And it was nice to see the black guy in the movie actually survive to the end and use his brains. And so 2.5 stabbies for the original. And then the 2009 one, again, I'm not sorry that I saw it, so it's not one, but yeah, I did not think it was as good as the original. So I'm giving the 2009 one 2 stabbies. We came up with exactly the same rating. I didn't think that would be.
Amazing day.
Shall we play a game?
All right, you ready to do the quiz?
Let's do it.
Watching these movies, all I could think about was, especially with the 88 one, I originally had the idea of the trivia today, watching the original movie, and I thought, this is like the cheesiest horror movie we have ever seen on Slashback Cinema. And I decided that all of my questions were going to be about a restaurant that opened in 1977. That restaurant was Chuck E. Cheese. So I've got 4 Chuck E. Cheese trivia questions for you.
Oh my God. All right.
Ryan, so have you ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese? Was this
Why,
part of your
yes, I
childhood?
have. Yeah, it was it's been many years. When I was probably middle school, that was kind of the heyday of that. Grandma used to take me and my brother.
Oh, very nice. Was this the grandma that let you pour sugar on top of your sugary cereals?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
You had a good grandma.
Yeah, and she'd take us to Toys R Us too. We were living large.
Wow. We did like, I think my son's birthday there when he was little. I mean, they beefed up the arcade since the old days in the late 70s, early 80s. So it wasn't too bad. The pizza was god awful though. Do you recall? That was maybe the worst pizza I've ever eaten.
Even as a kid, I remember it being bad. Like it was
Yes.
like you would eat it because you were hungry, but yeah, not good.
Yeah, so I think we're going to be losing a sponsor. So question number 1, who created the restaurant Chuck E. Cheese? There's a reason why you might know who this is. Was it A, Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, B, Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, or C, Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's? Which of those 3 guys, Nolan Bushnell, Gene Roddenberry, or Ray Kroc, invented Chuck E. Cheese?
That's a tight set there. And the only reason I know this answer is because I think it was NPR's How I Built This. Nolan Bushnell.
Yes.
The Atari guy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Created Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah, but it made millions.
Yeah.
Off
that
of
guy
the
could
idea.
not lose. Damn. Atari and then Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah.
He definitely had his finger on the pulse of where America was in the 70s and 80s. Well done. Okay, well, let's see what else was on this documentary that you watched about Chuck E. Cheese. So Nolan Bushnell ultimately settled on the name Chuck E. Cheese, but originally he had a different name in mind. I'm going to read you 3 options. One of them was the original idea for what to call Chuck E. Cheese, but he changed it. So was he going to call Chuck E. Cheese Tony's Pizzeria Parlor? Was it going to be Nicky Ricotta's Pizza and Play? Or was it going to be Rick Rat's Pizza? Which one was the original name of Chuck E. Cheese?
Now, I don't remember this, but I'm going to go with Rick Rat's.
Rick Rat's Pizza? You are correct.
Oh, yeah.
So originally, Nolan Bushnell wanted to have a coyote as their main character, as their mascot. But when the costume came in, it was a rat. So he thought he would call it Rick Rat's Pizza. But the marketing people were like, yeah, we don't think that's going to fly. So Chuck E. became a mouse. And it, of course, famously got named Chuck E. Cheese. And I have a third question. Ryan, what does the E stand for in Chuck E. Cheese? Does the E stand for eats a lot? Does the E stand for entertainment? Or does the E stand for enchilada?
E stands for entertainment.
That is correct. The full name of Chuck E. Cheese is Charles Entertainment Cheese. Well done, sir. You're killing it today.
Thank you. Going back to the second question, that is a head scratcher that you would order a coyote costume. Show up as a rat.
That's a head scratcher. And then the fact that you would then call it Rick Rat's Pizza. I feel like, whew.
Kudos to the marketing people for talking them off the ledge there. So,
yes. Yeah. All right, here's the last one. You're looking at you got 3 out of 3. You're looking at a potential 4 out of 4. So in 2012, the company that owned Chuck E. Cheese decided they were going to update their image. And so one of their changes was they fired the voice of the original Chuck E. Cheese, and they hired the lead singer of a popular band to be the voice of Charles Entertainment Cheese. Who was the singer? Here are your three choices. Was it Jarrett Reddick, the lead singer of Bowling for Soup? Was it Scott Stapp, the lead singer of Creed? Or was it Fred Schneider, the lead singer of the B-52s? Who became the voice of Chuck E. Cheese in 2012?
Wow, this is an excellent question. Well, I kind of wish it would be the lead singer from Creed. I think that would be hilarious. You know,
Scott Stapp.
Can you take me higher? Yeah.
You want to do your Fred Schneider impression?
I'm not. Yeah. Rock lobster. No. Yeah. I'm going with Fred.
So your choices are Jarrett Reddick, Scott Stapp, or Fred Schneider, and you went Fred Schneider?
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, you might want to sit down for this answer, because it was actually Jarrett Reddick, the lead singer of Bowling for Soup.
Damn it! Like here, I thought I was gonna finally like knock this whole quiz out of the park, and I blew it on the last one. Oh well.
Well, let me tell you, but nothing to be ashamed of. The fact that you knew his name was Entertainment Cheese, you got Rick Rat's Pizza, you knew that Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari. I mean, those are impressive. Ryan, you got 3 out of 4. We watched a cheesy movie, and so I went back to our cheesy childhood.
I think we should pitch this to each of our tourism boards in our respective cheese states, Wisconsin and Vermont. Sponsor this family-friendly episode of Flashback Cinema.
Yeah, we're gonna have to cut a lot of lipstick out.
Yeah, we're gonna. This thing's gonna
really.
It'll be like, wow, that was the shortest episode ever. Because we couldn't talk about anything.
That wraps up another trip down memory lane. Hopefully you enjoyed revisiting Night of the Demons, 1988 and 2009 as much as we did.
And we want to hear from you. Got a favorite memory from the 70s or 80s? A classic horror movie you'd love us to dissect? Drop us a line at slashbackcinema.com. Your suggestions keep the conversation alive.
Thanks for tuning in to Slashback Cinema. See you next week.
Can you take me higher?
It's uncanny. Welcome back to Slashback Cinema, the podcast where this is going to be
yes, right out of the gate.
We've gotten to 8 words in.
So grab your black eyeliner and your favorite sacrificial snack and maybe a crucifix, just in case. This is Slashback Cinema. Let's get possessed.
Are you happy with your Let's Get Possessed, or would you like to do another take?